So I'm very happy to be in my new studio here at Shrimp Cottage, but there is a problem. And you might be able to already hear what the problem is. The problem is there are lots and lots of hard surfaces in here, and there's quite a bit of reverberation. And there's a high ceiling, which also doesn't help. So what I've got to do is find some way of creating a bit of sound deadening in here so that my recordings are not quite so resonant. And the focus of that is going to be here at the back of the studio table. First, I'm going to make an anti-sound mirror or something like that on the back of the wall here. So there are lots of different ways you can tackle this. You can just buy some of this foam type of stuff. This is what I've used in the past. This kind of egg box type foam or pyramid foam I've got here. This is actually quite fragile, this foam. You can see that the points have broken off, and actually the foam has broken into several pieces just where I've been handling it. So, you know, we could put a chunk of this foam on the wall there, but it's not very pleasing to the eye. So I think I'm going to try something else. I'm going to make my own sound deadening tiles to go on the back of the wall here, because you can buy much more attractive stuff than this. You can buy hexagonal, pretty coloured foam tiles to go on the walls, but they're quite expensive, and I'm a cheapskate. So we're going to be trying to make our own sound deadening tiles today. And my material of choice today is going to be corrugated cardboard. Now, corrugated cardboard itself is not a great dampener of sound if the sound hits it this way, but these little holes in the end here, having worked in a warehouse and having walked past a stack of cardboard boxes where it was all piled up and all you could actually see was the end grain of the corrugated cardboard, you'd notice that it really deadens sound. In fact, you kind of almost hear a void as you pass it. This is a really good sound absorber. So we're going to make a material that is basically end grain corrugated cardboard and then cut that into shapes and put it on the wall. So, first thing to do is to cut consistent strips of corrugated cardboard. Actually, I tell a lie, that's the second thing to do. The first thing to do is just remove this packing tape. Editing Shrimp here, with just a quick note to mention that this video is long and rambling, because I've left in a lot of the experimentation, trial and error that led me to the final process for this project, and I've done that on purpose for several reasons. Firstly, because people can learn from my mistakes without having to repeat them. Nextly, because I think it's important to show that not everything always works perfectly to plan first time. Failure and retry is a natural part of the process here, and it's not something to be feared or ashamed of when it happens. And finally, just for my own sanity, because some of the things I tried, like duct tape, would undoubtedly arise in the form of helpful suggestions if I'd edited out those failures. If you want to skip the rambling, stumbling exploration of process, there are chapters in the timeline and links in the video description for you to do that. Okay, and so with a brand new sharp blade in my standing knife, I'm just going to cut strips of this cardboard against the metal ruler with the blade vertical. I'm just going to cut repeated strips of this corrugated card. And then when we've got enough of them, I will glue them up into a block of material that we can then cut that way. Right, I don't think you need to watch me cutting strips of card, but I'm going to carry on doing this for a little while until I've got enough to start gluing up. So, back in a moment. So, that's the yield from one box, plus a few scraps that will go in the recycling. Now, I think we'll just, before we cut up any more, I'm going to assemble this as a prototype and see what it's like when it's one block of material. I think that's sensible, is to go ahead and make one block first. Alright, now working on a piece of plastic to preserve the tabletop, I'm going to glue a bunch of this stuff up. Now, it probably goes without saying that this is going to look like a honeycomb when it's done, so it seems only polite to warn you if you've got one of those sensitivities to that kind of clustered holes thing, then maybe this isn't the video for you. Anyway, onward. So PVA glue, also known as forbidden yogurt. I don't think it's going to need a lot of glue, and I don't want to saturate the card, just need enough to hold it together. Yeah, that's going to be plenty. In fact, that tacked really nicely. That's good. Now hopefully once I get going, right, I'm going to put a load of these out like this and glue them in one go, because that seems like a sensible plan. Not worrying too much about glue getting on the end grain because it's going to be covered. Did I mention it's going to be covered? And then get those stuck together. Okay, I don't want to actually block the end holes like that, so I will turn that one round. Yeah, I need to be a little bit more careful than that. Make sure I haven't blocked too many of the holes in the ends. So that's a pitfall. It's a potential pitfall. I thought putting them together might have actually alleviated that, but apparently not. I mean, I could go and get a toothpick and pop all of those little bits of glue. I might still do that. Okay, so that's the theory. We're going to block it up like that and stick it together into a coherent material. I'm actually going to press it down that way because that then gives me a flat front. So there's a lot of effort invested in this, but I think what I'm going to end up with, I hope what I'm going to end up with, is a really, really effective anti-sound mirror that doesn't cost the earth. Okay, put that side down, true up the ends. Okay, and then, yeah, and that's actually working out really quick now that I've got those cut up. That's actually quite quick to assemble, and I'm sure once that glue dries, that's going to be really sound. Right, so that's all of it glued up, and I don't think it needs clamping or anything like that because the glue is really quite tacky. So I'm just going to leave that to dry out now and set, go and clean up my hands, and then we'll come back when this is set and we'll see what it's like as a material. Okay, the glue is set and mostly dried now, and I think that worked, although I can see one place where I haven't got a very good glue joint there, so that would probably break apart along that line. This material has some really interesting properties with regard to transmission of light. When I hold it up and let the sun shine through it, you can see, obviously because it's made of parallel channels, there's one orientation where suddenly the light comes through, and every other orientation it casts an opaque shadow. Likewise, if we try and look through it, we can kind of see almost like a spotlight where we're looking through the parallel channels, and every other channel that's not lined up with our view is opaque to us, so it creates a kind of spotlight effect. It's really quite interesting to play with. So, fascinating as this material is, it's definitely too thick because I won't be able to cut right through it with my Stanley blade. So I'm going to make a thinner version of this. This won't go to waste. I will use it for something, not sure what. It could actually be used to create laminar flow, but that's another story. So I'm going to create a thinner version of it using this ruler as a guide, because my blade will cut through a thickness that's that deep. So safety first. Here's the fun thing. I think if I was to try to use this ruler and cut against it, there's just not enough area here to press down on without ending up putting my finger a little bit over the edge, or risking doing that, or not exerting enough pressure and it slips. Just not enough ruler to press on there. So what I'm actually going to do is just use this one to create the offset, butt it up against there, and then make the cut. And that way I can cut nice consistent strips that are thinner than what I had before. So I'll crack on with that. Now you might be thinking, as you watch me laboriously cut this up, why not use a guillotine? Why not use a paper guillotine for cutting it? I've got one of those, but I think it would probably crush the cardboard too much. What I really need to do is slice through it, not scissor through it. And actually, once I get into a little rhythm here, this is not too bad. Another question you might be pondering is, why use a physical guide at all? Why not just measure some dots and lines and then cut along them? And the reason for that is that using a physical guide like this is typically a much more accurate and consistent way to cut things. Cutting on lines and so on requires a bit of lining up by eye, and it's the sort of thing that can be easily 0.5 millimetre out, and 0.5 millimetre is going to make all the difference. Second verse, same as the first. We're going to stick all of these together to make a big wafer. I don't know if I need to separate these bits. I probably do, just because it will be easier to glue them up. Eva, what are you doing? Hey, no, not yours. Eva was trying to help. And by help, I mean tear a piece of cardboard into many, many small soggy pieces. So yeah, we're just going to lay these out and get some glue on them. And I noticed actually the glue bottle has a built-in applicator, which I think is probably a better way of applying the glue than just brushing it on. I didn't expect it would be, but I just tried it out on a whim at the end of the last session, and it actually worked really well. So, yeah, this glue bottle has got a little applicator spout. I think, yeah, that works all right. True them up, flatten them down and give them a squeeze, and that's actually looking pretty good already. I think that is the material that we're going to be using, because it's just going to be a little bit more manageable. Okay, so there's that. Drying face down so that we get one really flat side, which is what I've pressed down against the board. We'll let that dry and we'll come back and have a look. It seems to have gone okay. There's version 2, which I'm much happier with. Nice and solid. Now it's dried out. Doesn't bend at all in that dimension, but does in that one. Right, I need to cut this into tiles that are going to go on the wall. And I think I'm going to cut it into Penrose tiles. Now I did want to do something a bit more elaborate than Penrose tiles, because Penrose tiles are just two different rhombus shapes. And actually Penrose initially made a set of tiles that was based on like a star and a rhombus. What I'm basically saying is I liked his first album better. Anyway, so I'll just hold those in place and cut. Yeah, I think that's going to work. Just cut through. Okay, and I am going to cheat a little bit anyway, because when I add these onto the wall, I'm not actually going to tile the surface of the wall with them. I'm going to leave a little gap. So, because I think it'll look nicer with the shapes spaced out a little bit. So, even though Penrose tiles are about tiling a surface, I won't actually be tiling it as such, because tiling implies complete coverage with no gaps. There's my first one. Just need to tidy that up a little bit just to make it completely fit the template. It's really not bad though, actually. Really not bad. Okay, so there's one of my Penrose tiles. I suppose I should do one. Now, in fact, I suppose what I should really do is cut all of the same tile out of here, because we're going to get better utilization of this material if we cut them all out of one piece, because the angles are the same. Right, I think actually what I'll do, if I just measured the angles, I could have just cut this on a grid and trusted that I would end up with accurate tiles. That piece we can take off, and I will not discard because we can make something out of that. So, Penrose tiles, and hopefully sound deadening Penrose tiles, but not very pretty, unless you like that sort of thing. The next part of the plan is firstly just to tidy these up with a bit of masking tape. Just really to hide the corrugations that might be exposed on the edges. Next thing to do is to cover these with fabric. I've got some really nice thin fabric here that drapes nicely, but also is fairly thin and quite an open weave, so the sound will not be reflected off of this fabric. That would just defeat the object of the whole thing. Not the neatest cut, but it doesn't matter. So it'll fold over like that. And like that. And then something like that. And like that. Let's see how that looks just with 3 sides done. Yeah, not bad. Obviously, once I'm actually sticking this down, I can probably make a better job of that. So, would it have been easier if I just bought some coloured foam and cut that into Penrose tiles? Probably. Would I have got foam in all of the delightful colours that I can get this fabric in? Probably not. But in theory, not bad. Now, of course, the difficulty with this is that these aren't just hospital corners, because this is not a square, it's not a rectangle, it's a rhombus, so the angles are not the same as they would be if you're folding bed sheets onto a mattress. I wonder if I should put some double-sided tape on the back and use that. That might work. Right, let's try that again. Stick that onto there, stick that onto there, much better. But now the tricky part. Wow, I underestimated the difficulty of this task. But I feel like if I get this right in one place, if I get this right once, it'll go right after that. Actually, do you know what? Maybe I need the double-sided tape around the edge here, so that I can actually stick it down and then tidy up the back. So I'll try a slightly different form of double-sided now. I'll try this foam stuff, which is going to increase the size of the pieces, but not their angles. So in theory that won't actually make any difference to their tiling. And as I say, I am gonna make it so that I have a little gap in between them, which will forgive a great deal of error. Okay, take that off, pull up the end and stick it on, and the same. Okay, and then yeah, that's better. So now I can just kind of wangle these corners. Something like that, which from the front is going to be fine. Yeah, I actually think rather than trying to glue a backing on here, I'm going to fall back to good old duct tape. Okay, and we'll do the other side of this one here. Pull that in. Time will tell whether this is going to stay stuck, because not only has this duct tape got to hold the fabric in place, this is the thing that's going to have the adhesive that holds it to the wall. So if this duct tape comes loose over time, that won't be any good. Sticky things on the back were variably sticky, and I'm not really sure that that's going to hold over time. So this, I think, is the solution. I've made myself a little tool from a coffee stirrer, and I can just push the fabric down into the back here of this corrugated cardboard. I am probably damaging this bit here, but not in a way that really matters. And so that seems to be the solution. So I will do that all the way around, then I'll stick a piece of card on here. I think that will do it. Fairly generous application of glue around the edge and across the middle. Tiny little bit of spreading that around just to distribute it. And then rather than have the glue run into the fabric, I'm just going to place it on there for now, just to get it placed, like so. Then invert that and weigh that down. Okay, change of plan. Penrose tiles, nice as that idea would be, are not that easy to cover. I'm getting puckering of the fabric. Partly that's because I'm not using stretchy fabric, because I'm using whatever is available to me. But also these narrow pointy bits on the Penrose rhombi are hard to cover, and it's going to be even more difficult on these pieces here with the even more acute angles. Also, these are quite small, and it's quite laborious to make a whole load of these. So, change of plan. I'm going to cut big circles. I'm going to make it with circles, and I'm going to make great big ones and maybe some small ones. Now, if only there was some kind of durable object that I could use as a template to cut round that I'm not likely to cut into with this knife. There it is. So, and don't worry about this bit here, we will not waste that. So, yeah, that's going to tidy up just fine. All right, now, not completely tidy around the edges. It does look like a section of wasp nest, but I'm not going to put the foam tape around this either. So this is just going to get a layer of maybe card around the edge just to tidy it up, or maybe just masking tape. So that's the plan going forward. I'm going to make some of these different sizes. I will decide whether to actually glue this onto another piece so I can get another big one out, or whether I'll cut some smaller circles. I am going to do different sizes. That's the new plan. Waste not, want not, and by that I mean the commodity that I'm trying to not waste here is not the material, but the time and effort I spent in making these pieces, which are just offcuts of various other bits and pieces. So I'm going to see if we can just reuse these offcuts. Some of the smaller offcuts obviously not reusable in this way, but we can probably reuse some of the bigger ones. Okay, and what we've hopefully got there is another usable piece that I can cut a circle out of. It doesn't matter what the layout of those pieces of card is, it's all corrugated end grain one way or another. I will just hold that in place while the glue goes tacky, which will take but a minute or two. Might be missing a trick here. I was at the beach today collecting fossils, looking for ammonites, and I had an idea for something that might be a bit easier than this. Instead of gluing up square panels like this and then cutting a circle out of them, why don't we just try winding a strip of this into a spiral that ends up being a circle? Let's try that. I'm going to cut some longish strips. We'll see if we can glue them up in a spiral. To test this idea out, I'm going to just go for the middle size circle. So I'm going to draw myself a guide on here. So to start with, I don't think I need the longest strips. The longest ones are the ones that have got the join in the middle. I'll save those for a bit later. Really, I just need to make sure that at no point I'm sticking down a piece that's shorter than the circumference of the existing circle. So let's start with these. I think this is going to be a bit more messy on the hands, but we'll see how we get on. It's washable glue, so it's not a big deal if I get it all over myself. I don't think we're going to need quite so much glue on these, because it's going to hold itself together as long as the last bit is glued. Famous last words. I probably should actually have a go at this before I start predicting what's going to happen. Now, to start with, it's going to be a bit messy, I think. And rolling it like this is closing up some of the corrugations, so it's not necessarily such a great idea this way, but we'll carry on and see how we get on. Because once we get to a larger radius, when the bend radius is not so tight, we won't lose so many of the corrugations. And actually, in addition to the corrugations that we're losing, we are actually also making additional little holes in there, as well as closing some up when it bends and kinks. So it could be swings and roundabouts. Okay, well, it seems to be working. I'll carry on. But it doesn't matter too much if this is a little bit loose, because it'll just compensate for some of that shortage of corrugation. I suppose it also doesn't matter if it's not glued everywhere. Maybe I don't even need glue on all of it. As long as there's enough glue to stop it just kind of coming apart under its own tension. What I'm actually going to do is just pin that together there. Press them down so we've got a flat front. Measure it up. We've got a bit further to go, but actually I think this is much more economical on cardboard, and it's really quick to put a circle together, so I think this could be the method. Okay, right, that is the last ring. If I just offer it up against that circle, I don't know if you can see that, that is now about the right size. So just to make sure that we haven't got an end, I've just squished that down so we can taper it in. That's where I need to make sure I've got enough glue, just on that last little section, just to hold it down. I'll pin that in place, which is the face side. That's the face side there. So I'll keep that flush over that side. And then just give it a little bit of adjustment to flatten it out. Pull out any ridges and imperfections so that this side is the presentation side. It doesn't have too much patterning on it. Okay, and then squeeze it into shape. That's looking pretty good. I think that's going to work. And the advantage is I can go on and make another one of those. I can just set that aside anywhere to dry, and I can go on and make another one. So I'm not limited to making one and leaving it here to dry. I can make multiple. And that does seem to have actually been really economical in terms of how much cardboard it used. So there they are. I got 3 of these out of the amount of cardboard I think would have only made one circle, maybe one big one and one small one. So definitely more economical, a whole lot quicker to do, and yeah, you can see where the ammonite inspiration came in handy, can't you? And I've decided actually what I'm going to do is make just all different sizes of these, just random sizes, and scatter them on the walls, and I think that will create the effect that I want. Okay, I cannot stress how much quicker and easier it is to do this spiral process. I can crank out like a dozen of these in an evening. I've gone back also and just put a ring of cardboard around the pieces I sliced from a slab, just because it tidies up the edge and gives me something that's a bit more consistent with what I've got with the other pieces. So now it's time to cover this batch with fabric. 5 different colours. So I'm going to sort my stack of discs into 5 different piles. I'm going to borrow Jenny's dressmaking scissors here to cut this fabric nicely. This one's got a bit of stretch in it, so I've got the ability to stretch it over the sides, and hopefully that will mean we don't get any puckers at all. So we'll cut about there. Wow. Really not neat piece of fabric, but who cares? Using some thread that's way over engineered for this, I'm just going to go around very roughly around the outside here. You'll see how roughly in a minute. The roughest of running stitches here. And there's no need for a hem here, because once I've got this gathered, I'm going to stick a piece of card on the back to hold it all in place. So the glue will prevent any fraying or tearing of this fabric. This is really just a running stitch to help me gather it together and bring it around the back of the form. It all tightens up and we end up with a lovely flat disc on the front. Perfect. And then I can pull those kind of tight and then tie them off. I will just trim off a few of these little scraps of additional fabric here. Okay, I'm really happy with that. That's actually a really good result. So I'm just going to cut a disc of card and slap it on the back. Now I spent a little bit of time covering all of these discs, and I think I've probably got enough to cover the wall behind the table here. But now I need to secure this fabric in place. There's 2 problems here. So I've got to glue flat cardboard to the end grain of the corrugated cardboard. I need a little bit of gap filling there, but also I need something that's going to grip that fabric and kind of bond with it and prevent it from fraying away. So I'm going to go for a 2-pronged approach here on my gluing. I'm going to put a ring of PVA around the edge of the card like that. Quite a thick ring. And then I'm not the world's biggest fan of hot glue because the open time on it can be pretty atrocious. But the plan is we put a big old blob of hot glue on there like that. And then get that onto there, and the hot glue will provide the clamping force. Get that the right way up now. I've got to be really careful I don't get glue on the front face of this fabric, because the PVA glue will stain this fabric. It is washable, but there's no way of washing it off once it's on a fabric that's on this form. Okay, just hold that in place till the hot glue cools, and that then just needs to dry. So I've got to set that somewhere and let that PVA soak into the fabric and dry. So I'll set it that way up for that. And I've just got to be really careful of spots of glue like this, that I don't get spots of glue on the next piece I put down. So I've got to think about how I'm going to do that. Okay, there are the first batch of pieces, 23 of them in assorted colours and sizes. Now I'm going to fix those on the wall here. I'm going to be using these transparent sticky pads. I've seen these advertised as nano adhesive, and I don't know whether that's actually true. This is just a very, very sticky material. Supposedly you can wash it and reuse it, but again, don't know if that's true. And with these, with the larger ones, I think I'll use 2 pieces. Well, if the manner in which it sticks to its own backing is any indication, I've got a good sticky glue here. Okay, well there it is, and love it or hate it, it does seem to work a little bit. This is a sound check without the noise deadening tiles. This is a sound check with the sound deadening tiles in place. We've got a lot more work to do in this room though, because the corners are the real thing that's the problem. Corners are very effective retro reflectors. So in addition to the corners, we've also got just a very high ceiling. So I will be hanging up something, some baffles or something that hang down from here. But those bits are going to be something for a future video. It won't be very long though, because I've got to deal with this problem. So there it is, part 1 of studio sound deadening design. I'm quite happy with the result there. I think as a general principle, this works. I'll be making some more of these. There's definitely more needed because you can probably still hear the room is still quite resonant. There are corners to deal with, there's the high ceiling, there are other hard surfaces. But for now, let me know what you think of my sound deadening solution. I imagine it's the sort of thing that people aren't gonna not have an opinion about. So let me know what you think. I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.